So last time we talked about the recording process and how you track each instrument to make a song. This time we're going to talk about mixing. So mixing is the process of putting all the different tracks together. For each microphone that I use, there's one track that goes into the program. With a lot of instruments, you end up with a lot of different tracks, and you got to get them all to play nicely so that you can hear all the different parts that you record. So some things are easier to mix than others, and some things can be quite complicated. For example, mixing a solo acoustic guitar piece is not too hard, but if you have something that's got 2 or 3 guitars and a bass and drums going on, the guitars will kind of fight with each other, and the bass will not get along with the bass drum and the drum set, and you might get things a little bit too muddy with the interplay between the bass and guitars too. So you need to tweak each individual track so that they sound good as a whole. So there's a million different guides out there that talk about mixing and the process of mixing, but here's my take on it. There's pretty much 4 different things that you're messing with on each track to make things sound good. You can mess with the track's volume, you can mess with where it's panned, left and right or center, you can mess with the equalization, which is a fancy word for how high or low or mid or treble it is, like you have in your stereo, and then you can mess with the reverb, which is the room sound or the tail after the sound has occurred. Volume seems pretty straightforward at first glance. You've got big faders on the desk, or in my case, little digital sliders, and you set how loud you want the track to be. Well, the nuance of it comes in with the different envelope of those signals within those tracks. So if you have something that goes from very soft to very loud, it's got a large change in volume, and if you're trying to pair that with something that's pretty consistent, you're not going to hear the soft part, or the loud part's going to be too loud. Sometimes you have to use what's called compression, which takes that signal and evens it out a little bit, and it can also be used as a cool effect. Panning is pretty simple too. This is moving something in the stereo image, and one easy trick is to take similar things and put them on either side. If you have 2 guitars, they don't sound that great both in the middle because they're fighting for space. You put one over here, put one over here. Oh look, they sound pretty good now. But you can use it for a lot more than that, including panning separate reverb tracks and adding a little bit more ambiance to it. Now, equalization, or EQ, is where you spend a fair amount of time. You can take each individual instrument and choose to cut some of the low end or the middle or the treble or boost it if you want to as well to make that sound either sound better on its own or fit better with something else. For instance, if you've got a bass and it's playing in a certain region here, and you've got a bass drum and it's playing a little bit over here, but there's that little overlap. Maybe you don't care about that sound in the bass drum, but you care about it in the bass guitar, so you can cut it a little bit out of the bass drum and boost it a little bit in the bass guitar, and then you can hear both of the instruments because you've removed the fighting between the 2 of them. And reverb is super important as well. Reverb is a great way to add character or depth to a melody voice, as well as it can tie the whole piece together. I'm recording everything in this one room, so I do have a bit of the room sound in each track. If I'm just direct recording an electric guitar or an electric bass, if I add reverb and send everything to that reverb track, I can make it sound like the whole band is in the same place, even though some of it was recorded just direct in. Reverb is really important for setting the tone of a piece overall. If it's supposed to be a big expanse, open kind of feel, you want to have a fair amount of reverb to it. But if it's a more jammin' fast kind of song, you want a pretty tight, snappy reverb that's not going to wash things out. So to show you all these different techniques in action, we're going to jump into my digital audio workstation, Reaper, and we're going to take a look at the second song for the second volume of the Railroads Online soundtrack, a song called Top of the Mesa. I haven't mixed this song, I've just recorded the instruments just like I showed you in the last video. So what you're going to hear is going to be just the raw tracked instruments straight from the microphone into the computer, and then we're going to see how each one of those techniques that we talked about can help make that song sound better and make it ready to go into the game. First things first, I like to take a listen and just kind of bring things up and see what it sounds like. Okay, so right away we can see that it sounds okay. I mean, the recording is good itself, but it's a little bit hard to distinguish all the parts. So I think first things first, I'm going to take these guitars and do a little panning on them. I've got 2 different guitar tracks here. I'm going to take both the performances and split them side by side, but I'm not going to hard pan them because they do solo out for a little bit. So I think I'm going to do about a halfway pan on either side. You can hear those two different guitars quite a bit easier now. That's already a huge improvement. Okay, so we've got all the volumes kind of roughly established now. Everything's in a relatively workable space. So now we want to work on improving the individual tones and then how they fit together. So let's try and enhance those sounds real quick. So we're going to grab an EQ and we're going to solo just the left side, the left guitar. This is kind of our fundamental lower area of the guitar. So we're gonna boost that a little bit. And then this other guy, this one is kind of the higher end at getting the pick attacks and that sort of thing. So we're gonna try and enhance that a little bit, give a little boost in the upper mid-range. So when we have the two mics together, we should have somewhat decent sounding guitars now. Let's keep on with that EQ theme, and let's add a little EQ to our bass. And we can see that a lot of what the bass is doing early on is just being a big, deep drone. So I'm going to enhance that a little bit. And we'll take out where it's not going to play. You're not going to get much information in here out of the bass. That's where our guitars are taking care of stuff, so we're just going to boost here. Okay, the EQ's pretty happy overall, so next we're going to run through and do a little bit of compression, adjusting the volume on each of these channels, just to get us a little bit more defined attacks. We're going to start with the guitars here. Okay, so here's no compression on the guitars. And here's a very slight compression on the guitars. And now let's give the bass the same treatment. We're probably going to compress the bass a little harder just because it's doing this super long drone thing in this tune. Really the only thing left as far as mixing is going to be getting a little reverb action going on in each of these things. So as we'll start with the reverb track all the way down, and then we will feather it up until we kind of hear it take effect, obviously, and then bring it back down a little bit. Okay. I think we're going to call that a mix. I'm going to master this real quick, and we'll talk about that next time, and then we'll let you listen to the whole track. So in the last video, we talked about different styles of songs to fit the vibe and flavor of the game, and this song specifically is a more spacey, ambient type of song that I could imagine you're cutting down trees, you're climbing up to the top of the hill, you know, getting ready to lay grade and lay track, and it feels like you've accomplished something when you've done it. So I hope you guys can hear that when you listen to the piece. So there you go. That's another song for the Railroads Online Soundtrack Volume 2. And that was how you mix a song for a video game soundtrack. I hope you guys enjoyed the song, and I hope you guys enjoyed my look into mixing songs. If you guys have any questions, comments, or anything else, type them below, and make sure you give a like and subscribe if you like the videos, and stick around for more as we go down the adventure of music production for a video game soundtrack. Thanks, guys.